Right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm here this morning with Mick Fogg, who is the expedition leader Asia Pacific for PONANT Cruises. And I'm really excited to see Mick because I haven't seen him for I think we just worked out probably 12 years. So Mick was in another life was expedition leader for Orion Expeditions, and we chartered that ship back in '09. So Mick was on that voyage, and we had some very memorable experiences together. So I'm really glad to see Mick again, and look forward to working with him again and the team with PONANT. So Mick, maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing now.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. It's great to join you today, mate. As you mentioned, it's been a while. We've seen each other, but I've been lucky enough to be working in the industry and visiting the Kimberley all those years since 2009, and then some before that. So now working with PONANT, so as their expedition manager for Asia Pacific. So that involves setting up all the itineraries, doing all the background work and things like that, and still have a huge love for the Kimberley. I think it's one of those places that once you've been, you're always going to want to go back, and hopefully that's the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been lucky enough to cruise it twice and also be in the land portion a few times. But I never forget, and will never forget, cruising the Kimberley. And some of my people always ask me, I've obviously been lucky enough to travel the world and been to some amazing places that a lot of people will never get to go to. But people always ask me what my favourite place in the world is. And I have to come back to the Kimberley, and I say, and I'm not just saying that now, but it's hard to define, but there's just something about it. And as you know, on that trip that we did in '09 together, that we were lucky enough to have Bob, Hawke, and Blanche, and some of his friends join us. And Bob had never been to the Kimberley before, and pretty well. And I was lucky enough to go to his house in February before he died, and shared a cigar and a few beers with him. And still to this day, or to the day he died, that was the best holiday he'd ever been on. So I think that as a man that's been lucky enough to go to a lot of places and experience a lot of things, so I think that says a lot for the Kimberley in itself. So yeah, it is a magical place. So Mick, what are you doing now with for this season and next season? You're planning. Obviously, you're still heavily involved in the itineraries and things. Anything special that you're planning for this season or next season?
Well, in all honesty, Brett, I just want to get back there. This is the longest I haven't been to the Kimberley since 2003.
Yeah.
So having missed last season and not getting there this year, but always looking forward. So we're planning 2022, 2023 now, and 2022 looks like a great year. I've just finished with a lot of the tide planning, which is one of the real sort of critical aspects of the Kimberley, as with places like the horizontal falls and Montgomery Reef, so we've got to be able to get there at the right times. So it's a matter of working those out. And it's kind of funny, having done it for almost 20 years now, it's sort of second nature. But when you head on out across to Montgomery Reef, you still got that thought in the back of your mind, have I got it right? Am I going to be 10 or 15 minutes out, or what's going to happen, because it's pretty critical. But we seem to have done okay for the last almost 20 years, getting it right. And I'm sure you'll recall, it's just one of those remarkable experiences being at Montgomery and just seeing that reef come out of the water. And I think, I always love it when I've got new staff members there, because you see it through fresh eyes, and watching some of them, just the grins on their faces when they see this natural phenomenon that's really hard to explain. I don't think 130 odd voyages up the coast, and I still can't find the words to adequately describe Montgomery Reef. It's just a phenomenon everyone should see at least once in their life. It
is. It's like an optical illusion. It's just, yeah, it is magnificent. So Mick, what would be besides Montgomery Reef, what would be your favourite part of the Kimberley?
You know, that's one of the big questions I always get asked, and I can't narrow it down to one because the great thing about my job being able to get out there is I get to see the Kimberley over the whole season. So I get to see it change, you know, from the early part of the year where you've got those, you know, the lovely contrasting colours at the end of the wet season with the green, the mangroves, the trees, the beautiful red rocks. And then as you come through the middle of the season, you start to get the whales moving in, and then you start to get that attraction of the harshness of the Australian outback, just that dry, harsh environment that's really picturesque. So, you know, going across the whole season, and then each destination changes during that time. But if I got to narrow it down, it's still pretty hard to go past taking a Zodiac up King George Gorge. I think that's one of the real highlights. You know, you feel so dwarfed. You're in this tiny Zodiac, you know, you're 6 meters long in a Zodiac, and you've got these 90-meter vertical cliffs of just that wonderful Wharton sandstone and the colors that change throughout the day. And you never know what's around the next corner. You never know what you're going to see, you know, and that's what I really like about it. Each day is a new adventure, you know, and they're long days, they're hot days in the Kimberley, but you just want to get out there all day, every day and enjoy it. So if I had to pick one, would be King George, and then probably Montgomery Reef as my number two, and then maybe the Hunter River after that, just up the mangroves, always searching for wildlife.
So Mick, yeah, I have to agree with you. Going up, I remember the first time I went up there in the Zodiac, it was a great experience. And the day that we all went up there together at the beginning of the season and walked up, walked up that, I think it's like almost 45 degrees to the, and it was like you said, it was hot, but you just wanted to do it. And we got to the top of King George's Falls, and wow, what an experience that was. It's
Yeah.
what would your favourite time of the year be?
Again, I think it changes. You know, I like going early, and I like going late. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's the idea with it, is that there's something that changes the whole time. You know, they sort of try and talk about two seasons, you know, waterfalls and whales and things like that. And I think there's merits in both. You know, to go and see the waterfalls early March, April, it's still pretty hot. You know, and coming from down south, you know, and each year when we'd start at the end of March, you'd turn up there and go, I don't remember it being this hot last year, you know, but it is every year. You're just coming from down south, hit that Kimberley heat. But the colours are spectacular at that time of the year. And then heading further into the season, June. Look, for me, June's great for things like wildlife. You know, the water's starting to recede. You know, it's cold. Crocodiles have got to get out on the rocks. You know, you don't see them much in April. And then by the time you get into July, you're talking whales. And that's always a lovely backdrop to have, you know, humpback whales breaching in front of sandstone. I think is one of the most remarkable things you can photograph on the planet.
so Mick, what's the best thing you've ever brought home from one of your adventures?
What's the best thing I've ever? Well, actually, I should just say every passenger. So it's probably the way I like it, the way I'd like it to say. But I just think the memories, the people you meet, in all honesty, like having that opportunity to meet Bob Hawke, who I'll never forget, as you know, talking to him one on one. Obviously, I was no one. He's Bob Hawke, so you get to talk to him, and he would you sort of talk to him, thought, oh, he's a little bit, you know, standoffish. What's he like? And then when you had him do his interviews on stage, and you just handed the man a microphone, he just turned into someone else.
Yeah.
You know, he was one of the most brilliant orators, just an amazing speaker, and just had total control over the whole audience. And that feeling you got, just totally awestruck in front of him. So having those opportunities to meet people like that, I think are remarkable. But for me, the one that stands out was, again, your voyage, 2009. You provided me with so many memories over the years. 100 odd voyages later, and I still go back to yours, and that day at King George, which was just spectacular, walking up there. And there's a story associated with King George about the Kalama. So the state ship Kalama was actually bombed off the West Australian coast in April of 42. And I used to do a talk on it on board, still do, and mentioned that story. And I had a lady and a husband come up to me afterwards, and she said, oh, you know, where they camped at Calamity Cove, is there any chance we could go and see that? And I said, oh, look, the timetable's really full. We don't get that opportunity. And her husband just elbows her and says, June, you should probably tell him who you are. And this lady was the daughter of the skipper of the Kalama. It was Jack Eggleston's daughter, one of the great sailors of Western Australia. So we just pulled out all stops, took the captain and her over there with her husband the next day, and took a bottle of champagne and toasted it and had a look at it and walked through memories. And we kept in touch for a number of years after that. And I think for me, that's just those sort of personal moments, heartwarming times, that they're the greatest things I take home from my voyages.
Yeah, that was pretty special, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
You couldn't. I know we keep going back to that, but and it's really nice for you to say that, because yeah, we obviously all put a lot of time and effort into that trip, and we were lucky too. We had a really good group of people, and had some fabulous experiences. And I know that lady. The only reason she went on the trip was to have that experience. So it was nice of you to do that. So Mick, one of the big questions the team get asked is about the Zodiacs, and how safe they are and how easy they are to get in and out of. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah, look, I think the Zodiacs have been a cornerstone of the industry since the early 60s, and sort of got this lovely proven track record of safely getting people backwards and forwards from ship to shore all across the planet. And I don't think any other tender vessel has had that trial over that many years. You're talking almost 60 years of operations in these military grade Zodiacs, because a lot of people, when you say Zodiac, they kind of think of that little tender they take out to their yacht in the marina, the people are rowing at the time of the things, but these are military grade. So they're Zodiac Milpros, so military grade Zodiacs, really safe and allow you to land anywhere. So for us, some of the rocky shores in the Kimberley, you can get a rubber boat. It's not all rubber, but you can push them up against rocks, and then you can just easily step out because they sit flat. Whereas if you've got an aluminium dinghy, it's going to do that because it's sitting on its chine, and therefore it'll roll. So it gets a little bit more unstable to get out of. Whereas the Zodiac, straight up on shore, swing your legs over, and you're stepping into ankle to shin deep water, which is ideal. And now on La Perouse and all of our explorers, we have a hydraulic platform at the back end of the ship, our marina deck. So that allows us to control the height of that within centimetres, so that you can literally just walk out and step into a Zodiac. And there's always, staff there to help you in and out of both ends, which is great. So, it's funny, you often get guests on board who are a little bit apprehensive about getting into the Zodiac to start with, but then within a couple of days, it's second nature to them, and they can't wait to go on the next adventure and understand that they really are an ideal method of getting ashore, and also great for doing Zodiac cruising up the gorges and out to the reef and things like that.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure if you remember, but on that trip, we go back to 2009, there was a couple, Bruce and Mavis. And Mavis, she was, had physical challenges and had problems with her feet and her legs and everything. And she was apprehensive about going on the trip and how she would go with the Zodiacs. But, in fact, the staff were very accommodating. They helped her get on and off the Zodiacs, and so she didn't miss out on anything. And I've been in a couple of trips like that where we've had people with similar challenges, and they just take their time and know what their limits are, and there's always staff there to accommodate and help them get on and off. So I think that message for the people that watch this and are worried about, they've got physical challenges. It's even if they don't get out of the Zodiac on the shore, that they're on the Zodiac and they've got that experience.
I think one of the things I really like about PONANT, the way we do things, is the involvement of our captains. In the Kimberley and all the rest of it, and all the destinations, I should say, the captains are often on the marina deck, because they're the ones that are ultimately in charge of the safety. So they're the ones doing it, and they're the ones that we're able to talk to individual guests with the captain, with the chief officer there, to discuss what we can do, what's achievable, and involve them. And because our goal is to get them out as much as we can. We want them to experience the destination, so that involvement I'm really grateful for with PONANT, because So having the captain on the marina deck overseeing everything, making sure everything's fine, means that our success rate is really high at getting people ashore who don't think they can.
So Mick, you've obviously, you've obviously been in the industry a long time. And what would you say that sort of sets PONANT apart in the expedition world?
Oh, in the expedition world, what sets us apart, I would say, it's our expedition team. Our ability to have people that are engaging. It's okay to be knowledgeable, but you've got to be able to transfer that knowledge. You've got to be able to, involve the client. You've got to take the client on the journey. There's no point in you just sitting back and saying, oh, this bird is X species, it does this. That's not going to excite everyone. So the passion they have and the knowledge they have, I think is what separates us. We're able to, like, it's lovely food, they're lovely cabins, it's a lovely ship, everything else like that, but the difference for me is the expedition side of it, what we do. And that comes from the involvement of our captains down, involved in that whole process from the start of the voyage right the way through. And I think that for me is the big key element. In the Kimberley, we are the largest ship cruising the coast, but we've got the largest expedition team. You've got 14 people there taking you on walks. So 14, different expertise. So they can be from, bird guys, you've got historians, you've got your cultural experts, your marine biologists, all of that. And we all learn from each other. As I said, been doing it since 2003. And the great thing is I'm still learning from all of my team. Because there's so much knowledge there and so much passion. And I think for me, that's the real thing that sets us apart in areas like the Kimberley and Antarctica, is the knowledge and experience of our teams.
Yeah, you can have all the hardware you like, but you've got to be able to deliver the product, right? So Mick, I think the other thing is too is that what would a typical day be? Do you gather each evening and run through the day and, all those sorts of things? So, maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of what a day would look like.
What a day would look like. What I like about it is there's just no standard day, because you are governed by the tides.
Yeah.
So you've got to get to that tidal phenomenon. You've got to get to the landing site when you can. And so first thing I say to guests, so we do nightly briefings, and we do the first introductory briefing is I don't apologise, but I kind of sort of, in a way, do, and say, you're on holiday, but I'm going to drag you out of bed at some ridiculous times, and you're going to wonder why you're doing this in the middle of the day instead of doing it in the cool hour, because, time and tide wait for no man, and we've got no choice. So when we do that, we give them an overview of the voyage to give them an idea. We will quite often change around destinations to make sure that we're maximizing our time with the tides there, and they are done to the minute, and that's the thing with it, so we have to be there at that certain time. So always nightly briefings on the day after, and they're pretty comprehensive. We'll always show Zodiac conditions, we'll show landing site conditions, walking track conditions, all photographs. We do a rating system on board so that everyone knows, say like we rate King George 9.5 out of 10 as that walk. So that's sort of the scale of being that hardest walk up the hill, back down to easy ones like Jar Island, which are a 3 out of 10. So we have that scale so people can get an idea of what they're capable of after having done one of them. Show them all photos so they get that visual perception of what they're going to be doing the next day. If they have any concerns after that nightly briefing, they have the opportunity to come and talk to the expedition leader or the naturalist there on board about their own concerns with it and all the rest of it. And then that next morning, as the expedition team, we'll always head out and just double check that everything is as it should be. And thankfully, in areas like the Kimberley, it doesn't change too much. The landscape's been around for a couple of billion years, so it's not going to change too much for us. And then we revert that back to the ship. The cruise director will make those final announcements, to say, look, the landing is going to be a wet landing. The conditions on the shore are this. So you get that up-to-date information with that. So we'll go. Sometimes we can be out at dawn. Sometimes we're out middle of the morning, but we'll always try and get 2 activities done in a day for that. And whenever we're on board, the other advantage of having a large team of naturalists is that we can have someone doing a presentation on board. So when your group's not out in a Zodiac and you happen to be on board, we'll have in the theatre, you can go and watch a talk on the local area, some aspect of that, be it from, Aboriginal culture, the birds, the mammals that are there, and learn some of the research that's going on there. So your days are pretty full with it. And we've got a pool on board, which is great. So a lot of people like to lounge around that. And the great thing about our pool is I think it's about 32 meters from the bar. So it's not too bad. Not too bad. You can relax in there. We do in-pool service as well. So it's quite nice to sit there, and because you can't swim in the Kimberley, obviously, as you know.
Yeah, I know that.
So it's nice to have
I
that.
know that the crocodiles. I'll never forget when the first time we went there, and it might have been Jar Island actually. We're standing on the beach, and it was so hot, and it was such a beautiful day, and the water looked so inviting. And I can't remember. It might have been Darren said. I said, "Oh, I'd love to just jump in there for a dip," And he said, "Well," he said, "if you look over there," he said, "there's a crocodile swimming up and down the beach." And he said, "For every one you can't see, there's another 2 or 3 somewhere else watching." And so yeah, but for me, I love expedition cruising. I like all sorts of cruising, but for me now, I love the expedition cruising because, like you said, it's they're full on days. You learn a lot, and you sleep very well. And like you said, you wonder why am I getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning? But some of the things that you experience are things that you'll probably never get to experience again in your life. So you're there, you've got to get up and do it. But I remember the first time we went, and they said, well, you've got to be at the lecture, it's at 5 o'clock, and they're going to be one every day. And thinking, oh, really? One every day at 5 o'clock? I don't really want to do that, And then after the sort of first or second day, it's like, oh, what time is it? Let's get to that briefing, because they're engaging. There's photos of everybody that each day, and talk about what's going to happen tomorrow, and they're really, really exciting. So I think for me, expedition cruising is certainly something that I love. And so, Mick, what besides the Kimberley for 2022-23, is there any other exciting sort of places that you're going to around Australia, like Papua New Guinea or those sorts of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a deep history, well, with me and other members of the company, have a deep relationship with Papua New Guinea, in Melanesia itself. I think it's one of the most beautiful areas to cruise around, and expeditions again. So if you are having to choose what you're going to do the Kimberley first, head to Melanesia, and then go down and freeze in Antarctica. Probably the way I'd do it. I think, Melanesia, the thing about it is it's just so unknown. It is quite difficult to travel around if you weren't doing it by a ship. And the other thing about it is it's, for every destination you visit, around the next bay is another destination you could go and see. There's so much there to delve into in places like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, even West Papua, and those things. And we're still discovering new destinations today. Been at PONANT since 2014, and since then we've now made new destinations in West Papua and in Papua New Guinea again that are now being taken up by other operators as well. So, there's still so much more to explore out in those regions. And I guess, you always come back to Antarctica as one of those great destinations to go to. And for me, on our horizon is voyages down to the Ross Sea from Australia and New Zealand. I haven't been there since 2010. So that's the last time I was down in the Ross Sea. And I don't know, like the peninsula's wonderful. I'm never going to take anything away from the Antarctic Peninsula. You're talking 45,000 people a year nowadays. The Ross Sea is seeing less than 1,000. The comparisons are huge. And the thing I like about the Ross Sea is you're never going to go ashore and see a dirty footprint in the snow. It's pristine. And and everything just seems, I don't know, bigger, more impressive. And that's obviously cliche, but it's very much how you feel when you're there, So for me, getting back to the Ross Sea, and certainly Melanesia, Papua New Guinea region is those big ones on the horizon, and discovering Australia. getting more of that stuff in and around domestically. And, we're all in difficult travel times at the moment, difficult conditions, but it's opened up a lot of doorways to localized cruises, localized expeditions and exploring more on our own back door. So, and I think the other great thing about Melanesia and Papua New Guinea and even the Ross Sea is you're not doing a long haul flight. It's just here on your doorstep. You go from Cairns, do a voyage over to Honiara, it's a 3.5-hour flight back to Brisbane. Those sort of things that are easy to access, like the Kimberley is, so going from Sydney to Broome. So I think on the horizon, they would be it for me. Yeah, definitely Melanesia and the Ross Sea.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to Papua. We chartered a ship up there late 19, and yeah, it was spectacular and a bit hard to describe actually. For those who haven't been there, it's almost indescribable. And so it's one of those places that you can tell people all you like, but you've really got to go there to experience it. A bit like the Kimberley, I think. So Mick, we've got our Latitude brand, Latitude 33. We've got a cruise tour with you in April next year. So we're actually we've taken out Bamaroo Plains for 4 nights.
Nice.
Exclusively, yeah. Which is I've been lucky enough to be there a couple of times, and I love the place. So yeah, we're going, and obviously April is a great time for the water will be high, so we've got the airboat rides and all those sorts of things, and obviously barramundi fishing is at its best when all the waters are coming out. And then we're doing a cruise on the La Perouse for 10 nights from Darwin through to Broome. So that should be really exciting. So I've not seen any of the new ships, so I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully get to see one of those ships when they're here. But yeah, so that particular ship, Mick, that new generation of ship like La Perouse, what would some of the the key standouts be for you on those new ships?
Key standouts for me, I guess. I don't get a lot of time to use the luxury services or anything like that, so I can't really sort of talk about those. So from a maritime perspective and an operational perspective, they're streets ahead. It's amazing to be on a ship that's only a couple of years old and how far technology's come. I have in my time worked on ships that are 30 years old in the Kimberley, and the difference is staggering.
Yeah.
And you kind of think to yourself, well, 30 years, is there that much difference? Then all you got to remember is what a computer looked like 30 years ago, or what a phone looked like 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah,
that technology is huge.
Yeah.
So for us, the Kimberley, a lot of the areas, because there's not a lot of major shipping, so a lot of the areas aren't charted well. But we create our own charts. We've on La Perouse, we've got forward scanning military grade sonar, and we also use a thing called an OLEX system, which is constantly mapping the seafloor everywhere the ship goes. And we combine that with our Zodiacs, and we're able to integrate that. So in 3 years now, we've built charts that are far more complicated than the Australian Hydrographic Office has.
Wow.
So, so we know where everything is in that area, and
that's fantastic.
Mapped out. So that allows us as an expedition operator to have another level of safety and also be able to explore. And that's the real key, I think, with these modern day vessels, that their maneuverability, they're so quiet. It staggers me with the electric diesel engines we have.
Yeah.
And we're only running MGO. We're not running any heavy fuel oils or anything else like that. So low sulfur when we can, which is great. So trying to minimize the footprint, maximize the experience. And that's the luxury of having a modern day ship.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great, Mick. Well, Mick, it was really great to see you again. And I'm sorry I'm not in Sydney, that our paths haven't crossed. That I was in Sydney for 2 weeks actually, and I just came back last week. But anyway, that's how it goes. With technology now, we can still chat and see each other, which is great. And I hope that I get to personally see you soon. And work on some more great itineraries and things with you and the team at PONANT.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Look, again, it's been a pleasure to see you. It's a pity. I mean, I'm based just north of Coffs Harbour in a little spot called Emerald Beach, so I try not to make it down to the big smoke too much. It's a little, scary. but I think, I always remember working with you for the charter on Orion, and your attention to detail, your desire to please your clients, very impressive. And I think it always ensures that we get a great experience and a worthwhile and a memorable experience, like we've spoken about. I mean, so many of the memories for me over the Kimberley come from that voyage, and that's because of your attention to detail and wanting to work with us as the provider. And that's great. That's a really good match. And yeah, I hope I get to see you in person before April next year, mate.
Well, actually, I do drive to Sydney sometimes, and I do know where Emerald Beach is, actually. In fact, I stopped there, I think not the last time, but the time before. I packed myself a sandwich and I stopped there, because normally I just drive straight through, and stop for fuel. I always stop in Coffs Harbour to get bananas. And I went out of my way to get off the freeway and went across to Emerald Beach and sat and had my sandwich. So next time I'm coming through there, I'll let you know. If you're around, I'll have a sandwich. But yeah, no, thanks for that. Look, it's I always tell people that anybody can charter a ship, book a cruise, book a hotel, or those sorts of things. It's the little things that make the difference, and the attention to detail that make the difference. And I always remember, Bob saying to me, he said, Brett, when we were out at the Bumbles, he said, Brett, you've impressed me immensely. He said, you've given us champagne and croissants at King George's Falls, ice creams in the Hunter River, cocktails out in the middle of nowhere. He said, but boy, I could do with a beer out here. So, I thought, how the hell am I going to get a beer out here in the middle of nowhere? So I said to the driver, where are we going now? And he said, oh, we're going back to a camp for afternoon tea, and then we're flying out. I said, well, I don't think a cup of tea is going to cut it for Bob. So anyway, we got to the camp and he introduced me to the general manager, and I slipped him $100 and I said, look, I don't care how you do it, we've got to get a beer for this bloke. And anyway, Bob was inside making his cup of tea, and the general manager said, look, come down here in 5 minutes with Bob and I'll make sure we've got a beer for you. I said, okay. So I go inside and sidle up to Bob here. He's making his tea, and he looked at me. I never said a word. He never said a word to me. I just said to him, follow me. And he put his tea down. We walked outside, and we walked into this area where this bloke had an esky full of cold beer. And Bob goes, you bloody beauty. But seriously, this bloke gave us a can of beer each. And before I reckon I've even cracked it open, Bob's already finished it. And so Bob always thought that, Brett, you could do anything. And when I got back on the ship that night, his mate Peter Bartholomew said, Brett, you're in trouble now. I said, why? He said, Bob thinks you can do anything. But anyway, Mick, it was lovely to share some memories with you, and also some foresight into PONANT and the new ships. And we'll look forward to our Latitude tour with you in April next year. Absolutely, mate. It'd be great fun, and thanks for your time, and thanks for having me. Yeah. Well, I hope we can both be on board together again. Absolutely. All right, we'll make it happen. Cheers, mate. Right. Thank you, Mick. Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye.